This week we are talking about blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. To Jesus, the drive for justice, for rightness, was like a hunger. And he knows that so many of those who follow him feel that same gnawing inside at the fact that the world is not just, that there are people who are suffering either needlessly or as a direct result of evil. Jesus also in Luke 6 doesn't use hunger as a metaphor. He talks about blessed are those who hunger now. Because in our world there are people that are hungry, and it fits in to that drive inside of us that wants justice and wants rightness, a world where people are full, where they're not hungry. People who are following Jesus, who are following him in this way, this path that he has created with the Beatitudes, are people that are going to have this hunger and thirst for righteousness. They are also people that are going to have eyes that see people who are hungry. Jesus didn't show up in his society and only see the people seated at the most important tables. I think he walked in and immediately noticed the people that were not seated at those tables. If you will allow me to use Encanto, he would walk into the dinner at the family madrigal, and his first question would be, "Where's Bruno?" That's what he does in our families and in our societies, and that's what he is asking us to do. To have a hunger and a gnawing inside of us to pull up a chair, to make things right, to make things equal, and this is a scary thing to do. How do we do that without giving up power? We can't. How do we do that without changing the dynamic of our group? We can't. We can't do it and still stay in control. But this is the society in the kingdom that Jesus promises when he says, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled." Hello, and welcome to Take Heart Journey. We are still going through the Beatitudes, and today we are talking about blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled or they will be satisfied. And I really have started to understand the Beatitudes a little bit more as I go through. There's this duality in what Jesus is saying, where on the one hand, he's listing things that we experience as humans, hunger, thirst, poverty, weeping, things like that, and things that he experienced in his time here on earth. And so he takes his own medicine in that way. And so while he's listing things that we've all experienced, or that some humans experience as part of the human condition, he is also talking about, I think, a list of things that will not be in his kingdom, a list of things that he's going to conquer. And so I think in Luke 6, it's not hunger and thirst for righteousness, it's blessed are those who hunger. And so I think that part of seeking that rightness and that righteousness is seeing those who are hungry, those who are suffering physically, materially, and providing for them. And so whether you are someone who is actually hungry or who is just hungering and thirsting for righteousness and justice in this world, I believe that part of what Jesus is doing in the Beatitudes is giving us an invitation. And so that's where my art came from this week, the idea that you are invited, that God is a place where you are satiated, you are full, and you are satisfied. The longings inside of us are not wasted with God. I do believe the day will come where they will be filled. So let me read you the verses that I was thinking about while I made the art this week, and then we can talk about the supplies. So this is from Isaiah 55. Come, all you who are thirsty, come to the waters. And you who have no money, come, buy and eat. Come, buy wine and milk without money and without cost. Why spend money on what is not bread, and your labor on what does not satisfy? Listen to me, and eat what is good, and you will delight in the richest of fare. Give ear and come to me. Listen that you may live. I will make an everlasting covenant with you, my faithful love promised to David. So I thank God for his faithful love that he has promised and that we have available to us and that we can rely on as we face suffering in the human condition and in our world, and that we can trust Jesus' upside down, #blessed kingdom is a place where we will be filled. All right, before we get started with our supplies, I wanted to introduce my special assistant today, Linnea Rose. Come on over. Linnea is home from school today, and she is my helper, right, babe? Okay. So this was a very fun project. I loved making this, and I have a couple things I want to tell you about it. First of all, the supplies are the canvas roll that I had when we made the bookmarks. So I used the extra that was left over from my canvas roll. I think that entire canvas roll, I made something like 10 bookmarks, and then also what I have hanging on the wall, and I think it was about $10. So that is an awesome investment to do something different and fun like we did today. And then the other thing I did is, do you want to hold those up?
Yep.
I used a hole punch to make holes in the corner of the canvas, and then our grommets and our grommet tool to put those holes in and be able to hang it up on the wall. And I can see it from where I'm sitting, and it's so cool and it's different, and it was more exciting to me than a big canvas because it was just something new and fun. And it also reminds me almost of like the scroll or the invitation that you would get to something, that you are invited, and so it fit perfectly with our project today. The other thing that I wanted to tell you is that this project, I was very inspired by something that I saw online, and it was very similar. And so what I've been doing lately is when I find art that I think is beautiful and that I really like, I pay attention to the composition. So where is everything placed? Like, where's the focal point? And then the colors, because it helps me so much to look and see a color scheme that I already know looks really good and that I like. And so that's exactly what I did for this project. I used the exact same composition, and then I had a lot of the same colors because they looked so good on the piece that I was inspired by. And it's almost a piece that I copied, but it was so fun. And another thing I'm really excited about is I'm finally starting to love flowers, and I'm finding that the less realistic and the more loose and fun that I make them, the more that I like them. God bless you. All right, so you will find an exact list of all of the supplies, including clickable links to get them on Amazon in the description. And so if you want to know the exact colors that I'm using, that's where you can go. All right, let's get started. The very first thing I want to show you today is my inspiration picture. And I used this heavily as I made this week's project. I had it open in front of me on my iPad and I was looking at it as I created. And so before I started, I tried to gather as many of those colors as I could recognize. And I also planned to use the same composition, to have words in the middle with all of the flowers on the outside. And so you can do the same thing either with a picture of my project or of another project. This one that I was looking at is from a brand called Natural Life, and it helped me so much to use this as I got started on my project. Okay, so as you know, today we are using rolled canvas, which I have found is something that inspires me so much because it's a little bit different and it's so flexible. You can do so many different things with this. And so one of the first things that I'm going to do is use my paint to seal the edges because they do fray a little bit, but since this is acrylic, if you put a layer of an acrylic, whether it be matte gel or your paint on the bottom, it will stop it from fraying. Also, because of how long and thin my project is today, you are going to see camera angles change throughout the tutorial just so you can see exactly what I'm working on. So here are the paint brushes that I used. I had one that was more pointed and then a filbert. And so I am going to use the brushes that I have to create leaves basically on their own. The brush is doing the work here. So pick two brushes of any shape and just find out what kind of leaves they create. I am having fun over here. I am showing you my palette so that you can see some of these colors mixed together look so beautiful, like the magenta with the red and then the purple with those two. And so I am just finding so much satisfaction as I'm creating this, just laying my paintbrush down and seeing what leaves it creates, and also mixing my colors and seeing what colors it creates. So this is going to be the foundation of this project, are all of these leaves. And so your leaves do not need to look like mine, but I just recommend a lot of stems and a lot of leaves, and then you will use that as the inspiration for all the flowers that you will add in that are the thing that really complete the project. One of my favorite parts of the inspiration picture is that these are fantasy flowers. There will be a vine that grows 4 different kinds of leaves in different colors, that grows 2 different types of flowers. And so it really gave me freedom to make whatever I wanted. I am not going for realism here. I am going for the joy and the beauty of what it feels like to be invited. And so this is my inviting garden from a fantasy world. And so I can use whatever colors I want. I can make whatever flowers I want. I can make big and little leaves on the same stem. And so as you create your greenery that is anything but green, I hope that you can do the same thing, that you just enjoy the freedom of creating all of this life that looks however you want it to be. I loved these flowers because they were the result of painting with orange over wet red paint, and the results made me so excited. Let me show you this beautiful blue flower that I made. I used a square edge brush for this one. You could also use a palette knife or anything, and you can see that it's maybe 10 paintbrush strokes total of blue, and then the blue mixed with white, and I thought that that turned out so beautiful. And then up here, I am using my filbert brush to basically stamp down flowers. And so I think that I ended up using a total of maybe 4 brushes, and a lot of this is just playing with those brushes and seeing what they do when they're stamped, when they're dragged. And I wanted to show you another bird's eye view of this big long canvas. As I'm creating, I have a few things in mind. I am thinking about the composition because that circle, which is just, I traced a giant container. That circle is where I know I'm going to put my words. And so these flowers are framing that. And so I am keeping in mind the balance as I create of color. I don't want a color to be only in one place, so I'm using it throughout the canvas. And then I'm also wanting the outside of this circle to be balanced and to look beautiful. And so this is where I have some leaves going in or some flowers overlapping and adding to the wild garden feel of the piece. One trick that I use a lot in my art is water. When your acrylic paint is still wet, you can use water almost like an eraser if the layer underneath is dry. And so you can see I didn't like the size of that petal, so I came in with a super wet paintbrush and I used the water and a paper towel to just wipe the extra, and it came right off. And so you can use water like an eraser as you create with acrylic paint if it is still wet. And part of why I included that mistake, and I include at least one other in this video, is that I was realizing that I edit out all of the mistakes that I make as I'm painting. Nothing that I make is perfect, and you know that my end results are never perfect, but just a reminder that what you're seeing is an edited video, and that as you create both your art journals and your projects, you are going to do things that you don't like and that you don't think are perfect. And guess what? I do the same thing. So I am lettering in the "You are invited" here, and what I did is I made a line down the center and I put the center letter of each word first. So I wrote the O and the R and the I first, so that these would be spaced out correctly. And then part of this is lettering, but I also like that it is my own handwriting that is showing here. And so this is another element that, to me, the more quirky and imperfect this was, the more invitational that it really becomes. And so I loved putting my own handwriting on here and thinking about the idea that we are invited by God. And then that makes me think about what are areas in our life that we can be like God and do the inviting. And it might be real things like feeding people who are hungry, offering our homes and our riches and our lives to people who need help. But even just the simple invitation of someone coming over for coffee can be life-changing. And so let's, as a Take Heart community, be people that are inviters. Let me show you what to me, transforms this from a piece of canvas to a really unique piece of original art. I used a single hole punch to make holes in each corner of this canvas, and you will see with this one I had some trouble. It didn't punch all the way through, but luckily the hole punch is not the finished product. We are going to put a grommet inside each hole that seals it, that adds an element of a finishing touch to this canvas. And so I'm going to use my grommet tool and my grommet here, and I'm going to do this same thing in each corner, and then I will hang it up on my wall with push pins. And I loved how easy this was to hang up, because that is honestly one of the most intimidating parts sometimes of getting art on the wall. This ended up being one of my favorite pieces of art. Look at those sun catchers putting rainbows on the wall. And I just want to thank you for being an invitational community and a place where we can all share together.